There is a moment in the spiritual realm where God's voice becomes more than just a gentle whisper, where it carries weight, urgency, and a sense of immediacy that cannot be ignored. When God speaks to his chosen ones with urgency, it is not for casual listening, it is not for delayed obedience, and it is not for selective response. It is a warning, a divine signal that something in the atmosphere has shifted, that something in the unseen has aligned, and that a step of faith or action must be taken without hesitation. The urgency of God is never without reason. His warnings come when the enemy has laid snares in the path, when spiritual battles have intensified, or when his chosen ones are on the edge of walking into a season of promise that demands preparation and defense. Tonight carries such weight because the voice of God is calling his chosen ones to be alert, to be watchful, to awaken from spiritual slumber, and to grasp the seriousness of the moment. When God releases urgency, it is because heaven has already seen the movements of the adversary. The chosen ones may not yet see the attack. They may not yet feel the full force of what is approaching. But the Creator who knows the end from the beginning alerts them in advance. He knows the strategies of the enemy before they are executed. He knows the hearts of men before they make decisions. And he knows the traps before they are laid. This is why his warnings must never be taken lightly. The urgency tonight is a call to action, a call to stand firm in the Spirit, a call to embrace the weapon he has placed within reach, and a call to align with his will without delay. Too often people hear God's promptings but push them aside, waiting for confirmation, waiting for convenience, or waiting for a better time. But when God warns with urgency, hesitation becomes dangerous, delay becomes costly, and passivity becomes a doorway for defeat. The chosen ones must understand that when God speaks tonight, he speaks with eternity in mind, he speaks with destiny in mind, and he speaks with protection in mind. The divine urgency also carries with it a sense of responsibility. Being chosen by God is not a light identity. It means being set apart. It means being given access to spiritual insight that others may not discern. And it means being entrusted with instructions that carry weight for one's own life and often for the lives of many others. God does not warn casually. He does not sound alarms for entertainment. When his chosen ones hear his voice tonight urging them to use the weapon he has ordained, they must realize they are stepping into a divine assignment. This assignment is not only about survival but also about victory, not only about defense but also about advancement, not only about guarding against attacks but also about unlocking blessings and promises that have been waiting on the other side of obedience. Urgency in the spiritual realm is different from panic in the natural realm. Panic arises from fear and uncertainty, but urgency arises from clarity and foresight. God's urgency is not to instill terror but to awaken readiness. It is to stir the spirit of his chosen ones so they cannot remain still, so they cannot remain complacent, so they cannot allow the distractions of the world to drown out the trumpet of heaven. Tonight is a night of awakening. Many have been drifting, many have been lulled by routines, many have been tempted to compromise, and many have been spiritually weary. But when the King speaks with urgency, his words pierce through the fog, his voice shakes off the lethargy, and his spirit revives the fire that was fading. The urgency tonight is a reminder that there is more at stake than what the eyes can see, that battles are being fought in the invisible realm, and that the chosen ones cannot afford to be silent spectators in this critical hour. The warning carries not only weight but also love. God's urgency is never rooted in condemnation but in deep love for his chosen. He warns because he protects. He warns because he provides a way of escape. He warns because he equips his people to stand victorious against the works of darkness. It is the nature of a loving father to alert his children before danger strikes, to instruct them before confusion overwhelms, and to guide them before they take missteps. The chosen ones are precious to him, and his urgency tonight is proof of his care. It is the echo of his covenant that he will never leave nor forsake, that he will shield those who are called by his name, and that he will ensure that no weapon formed against them prospers if they stand in obedience to his word. In moments of divine urgency, the chosen must quiet the noise of the flesh and tune their ears to the Spirit. The distractions of social voices, the weight of personal doubts, and the chaos of worldly demands often make it difficult to discern God's direction. But tonight, his chosen ones are being called into alignment. They are being told to still their hearts, to sharpen their discernment, and to recognize that the urgency of his warning is not optional, it is essential. Those who listen will rise, those who obey will walk in power, and those who respond will see the manifestation of divine protection and favor. Those who ignore may find themselves vulnerable, not because God abandoned them, but because they failed to heed his timely instruction. The urgency tonight is not about fear of the enemy, it is about confidence in the power of God. When the Lord warns his chosen, it is because he has already provided the way through. He does not issue warnings without also placing in their hands the weapon they need, the authority they carry, and the strategy they must follow. The urgency is not about defeat looming over them. It is about victory already secured but waiting to be activated. The enemy may roar, but the chosen ones have been given the roar of the Lion of Judah. The darkness may gather, but the chosen ones have been entrusted with the light that cannot be extinguished. The storm may rise, but the chosen ones have been anchored in the one who calms the seas. The urgency is God's way of reminding them that what he has invested in them is enough, that his Spirit within them is greater than what comes against them, and that their obedience tonight will unlock triumph that could not be reached any other way. The divine urgency also points to timing. God does not speak randomly, he speaks at the exact moment when his word will make the greatest impact. His timing is perfect, and when he warns tonight, it is because this is the appointed time for action. This is the night when the shift must take place, when the atmosphere must be addressed, when the weapon must be used, and when the chosen must stand firm. Delay is dangerous because timing matters. Just as battles in the natural world can be lost or won depending on whether soldiers arrive on time, so too in the spiritual world victory can hinge on whether God's chosen respond in season. His urgency tonight is a reminder that obedience delayed is obedience denied, and that the fullness of his protection and power is tied to trusting his timing even when it does not make sense to human reasoning. There is also a prophetic significance to urgency. Often when God speaks with immediacy, it is because something major is about to unfold. His chosen ones stand at the edge of transition, at the threshold of breakthrough, or at the doorway of destiny. But transitions are contested, breakthroughs are opposed, and doorways are guarded by resistance. The urgency is heaven's way of saying the moment has come to step forward. But the chosen cannot step unarmed, unprepared, or unaware. They must step forward with the weapon God has ordained, with the armor of faith, and with the boldness that comes from knowing heaven backs them. The prophetic weight of tonight cannot be underestimated. It is not just about individual survival but about advancing the kingdom, about fulfilling assignments, and about standing as light-bearers in a time of increasing darkness. God's chosen ones must also recognize that urgency is a test of their faith. It reveals whether they truly trust his word, whether they truly believe his warnings, and whether they are willing to act even when they do not fully understand. Faith is not always about seeing the full picture. Sometimes it is about stepping forward with only the light that God has given for the moment. The urgency tonight tests whether the chosen will move with that light or demand to see more before acting. True faith obeys at the sound of his voice, knowing that the one who calls is faithful to complete what he has promised. The divine urgency is also a call to separation. God's chosen cannot afford to blend in with the crowd when the trumpet of heaven sounds. while others may sleep, while others may mock, while others may dismiss the seriousness of the moment. The chosen must rise. They are set apart, marked by God, and entrusted with spiritual insight. They are the watchmen on the wall, the intercessors in the midnight hour, the warriors who fight battles others are unaware of. When God warns, He is not speaking to the multitude to ignore Him. He is speaking to His remnant, His faithful, His chosen ones who will respond and shift the atmosphere not only for themselves but for generations connected to them. The urgency also reflects the weight of destiny. Being chosen means carrying assignments that ripple far beyond one's personal life. The choices made tonight in response to God's warning could affect families, communities, and even nations. The urgency is not just about what the chosen face individually, but about the divine plans that hinge on their obedience. This is why God presses them with such seriousness. He is not merely protecting them from danger, He is aligning them with purpose, ensuring that nothing derails the mission He has entrusted to them. There are mysteries that God has concealed within the lives of His chosen ones, treasures of power and authority that are not always visible to the natural eye but are carried within the Spirit. One of the greatest of these mysteries is the hidden power of the spiritual weapon that God has placed in the hands of His children. It is not a weapon of the flesh. It is not crafted by human hands. It cannot be stolen by earthly enemies, and it does not fail in battle. This weapon is divine, it is eternal, and it is infused with the breath of God Himself. Many live their lives unaware of the arsenal they carry, unaware that God has already equipped them to withstand the storms of life, unaware that they are never defenseless because heaven has ensured that their inheritance includes power to overcome every force of darkness. The enemy thrives on ignorance. He thrives when the chosen ones do not realize what they have, and he thrives when believers treat the supernatural weapons of God as ordinary or unnecessary. But the truth is that the weapon God has given is more powerful than any earthly force, sharper than any blade forged in fire, stronger than any army, and more enduring than any opposition. The hidden nature of this weapon means it cannot be seen with human sight. Those who rely on the flesh will overlook it, mock it, or dismiss it as weakness, but those who walk in the Spirit will discern that what God has given them is unstoppable. The chosen ones often find themselves underestimated by the world, because the world looks at physical appearance, resources, and outward status. But hidden within them is a spiritual arsenal that cannot be measured by human standards. The enemy may come with visible intimidation, but the chosen carry invisible power. The hidden power of God's weapon is like a fire that burns beneath the surface, waiting to be released at the appointed time, waiting to break open in the midst of battle, waiting to reveal its strength when opposition rises. This weapon operates differently than earthly weapons. While human weapons are designed to destroy bodies, God's weapon is designed to dismantle strongholds, to silence the lies of the enemy, to uproot generational curses, to shatter chains of bondage, and to pierce through the thickest darkness. It is not bound by time or distance. It can reach into places that hands cannot touch. It can shift atmospheres where voices cannot speak. It can transform hearts that seemed hardened beyond repair. This is why it is hidden, because its effectiveness does not rely on visibility. The chosen ones may look ordinary, but when they unlock the power of this weapon, they become unstoppable forces in the Spirit. The hidden weapon of God often reveals itself in prayer, in worship, in the Word, and in faith. Prayer may seem like simple words whispered in the night, but in the spiritual realm, prayer becomes a sword that cuts through layers of opposition. Worship may seem like mere songs, but in the unseen it becomes a fire that drives away darkness and summons the presence of God. The word may appear like ink on paper, but when spoken with faith it becomes a two-edged sword that penetrates both soul and spirit. Faith itself is invisible, yet when activated, it pulls down walls, moves mountains, and releases miracles. These are the dimensions of the weapon God has given, and they are hidden because they are not designed to impress the flesh but to dominate the spirit realm. The chosen ones must understand that the weapon is hidden within them because it is tied to their identity in God. The moment they were set apart, the moment they were called, the moment God marked them as His own, He deposited within them everything necessary to fight and win. It is not something they have to beg for. It is not something they have to chase endlessly. It is already theirs, but because it is hidden, it must be discovered, cultivated, and used. Too many live below their inheritance because they do not recognize what they already carry. They fight with human strength. They argue with human logic. They attempt to solve problems with earthly strategies, while the weapon within them waits to be unlocked. The hidden power of this weapon requires revelation. Only when the chosen spend time in the presence of God, only when they lean into His voice, only when they walk in obedience, will they begin to realize the magnitude of what they possess. The enemy works hard to keep the chosen blind to this truth. If he cannot strip them of the weapon, he will attempt to convince them that it does not exist, or that they are too weak to wield it, or that it will not work for them. He whispers lies of inadequacy. He plants seeds of doubt. He magnifies the appearance of the battle, all in hopes that the chosen will never lift the weapon that has already been placed in their hands. But those who awaken to the hidden power will no longer bow to intimidation. They will recognize that what looks small in the eyes of the world is mighty in the hands of God. Just as David's sling appeared insignificant next to Goliath's sword, yet became the tool of victory, so too the weapon God gives His chosen may appear unimpressive but contains unstoppable force. The hidden weapon is also unique to each chosen one's journey. While the essence of it flows from the same Spirit, the way it manifests may differ according to calling and purpose. For some, the weapon is the gift of intercession, the ability to pray with such intensity that heaven moves and earth shifts. For others, it is the authority to speak and declare, shaping atmospheres with their words. For some, it is unwavering faith that refuses to bow even in the face of fiery trials, and for others, it is the anointing to worship until chains break and demons flee. Each chosen one carries within them a hidden arsenal tailored by God for their unique battles and assignments. This is why comparison is dangerous. The weapon you carry may not look like the weapon someone else carries, but its power is no less divine, no less effective, and no less able to dismantle the schemes of the enemy. The hidden power of this weapon is activated not by strength of flesh but by surrender of spirit. When the chosen lean fully on God, when they cease striving in their own ability and yield to His authority, the weapon comes alive. Surrender is the key that unlocks the hidden power. Pride and self-reliance dull it, but humility and dependence sharpen it. This is why many battles remain unwon, because the chosen attempt to fight with partial surrender, holding on to their own strategies while asking God to bless them. But the weapon of God does not operate under divided allegiance. It requires full trust, full obedience, and full alignment with the will of the Father. When the chosen reach this place, the hidden weapon becomes unstoppable. The hidden nature of this weapon also protects it. If it were visible, the enemy would attempt to steal or corrupt it. But because it is hidden in the Spirit, it is untouchable. The devil may attack bodies, finances, and circumstances, but he cannot destroy what God has planted in the spirit of His chosen ones. The weapon remains safe, guarded by God Himself, waiting to be used at the right moment. This is why no matter how fierce the battle becomes, the chosen are never truly without defense. Even when everything around them seems stripped away, even when they feel weakest, even when life appears to collapse, the hidden weapon is still there. It is a constant reminder that victory is not dependent on what is seen but on what is carried within. When the chosen begin to wield this weapon, the results are undeniable. Atmospheres shift, strongholds crumble, healing manifests, and breakthroughs unfold. Enemies that once seemed unbeatable fall, doors that once seemed sealed swing open, and chains that once felt permanent break apart. The hidden power becomes visible in its results, even if the weapon itself remains unseen. Others may wonder how the chosen overcame, how they survived what was meant to destroy them, how they stood when everything came against them. The answer lies in the hidden weapon, in the divine arsenal that only those aligned with God can truly wield. The hidden weapon also carries eternal weight. It is not limited to temporary victories or earthly gains. Its effects ripple into eternity, shaping destinies, influencing generations, and storing up treasures in heaven. When the chosen wield it, they are not only fighting for themselves but for those connected to their bloodline, for communities, and for the advancement of the kingdom. The hidden power is generational. Just as prayers prayed by ancestors can cover descendants, just as faith lived by one can inspire many, so too the weapon used by the chosen tonight can create ripples that outlast their own lifetime. This is why the enemy fears it so deeply, because he knows it is not just about one battle, it is about dismantling his kingdom across time and space. The discovery of the hidden power often comes through trials. It is in the darkest moments, when earthly weapons fail, that the chosen learn to lean on what God has given them. Suffering, though painful, becomes the training ground for wielding the weapon. Every tear, every sleepless night, every season of loneliness, every rejection, every betrayal sharpens the chosen and presses them deeper into reliance on God. It is there that they realize the hidden power is not theory, it is reality. It is not abstract, it is experiential. They learn not just to know it exists but to use it, to wield it, to master it under the guidance of the Spirit. The hidden power of this weapon is also limitless. Earthly weapons lose sharpness, grow dull, run out of ammunition, or break under pressure. But the weapon of God never runs dry. It does not weaken with use, it strengthens. The more it is wielded, the more effective it becomes. The chosen grow in authority the more they walk in obedience. Their prayers become sharper, their faith stronger, their declarations bolder, their discernment clearer. The weapon multiplies in strength because it is tied to the infinite nature of God Himself. When God looks at His chosen ones, He sees vessels designed not only to survive but to manifest His glory, to demonstrate His power, and to live in alignment with His promises. Yet the path to supernatural breakthroughs is not paved by human effort, clever strategies, or worldly strength. It is opened by two forces working together in perfect harmony: obedience and faith. These two are inseparable companions in the spiritual journey, and when they meet, the results are unlike anything the natural world can comprehend. Obedience without faith becomes mechanical and empty. Faith without obedience becomes shallow and unfruitful. But when obedience meets faith, heaven responds, barriers collapse, and doors swing open that had been sealed for generations. This is the divine equation that unlocks breakthroughs. Obedience is the act of aligning with the voice and will of God even when it contradicts personal desire. Even when it does not make sense, even when it costs comfort, relationships, or reputation. It is not partial compliance or selective following, it is full surrender to the one whose wisdom surpasses human reasoning. Faith is the unwavering trust in the unseen, the confidence that what God has spoken will come to pass even when circumstances scream the opposite. Alone, each carries weight. But when obedience and faith converge, they create a force so powerful that nothing in the natural or spiritual realm can stand against it. This convergence is the birthplace of supernatural breakthroughs, the kind that cannot be explained, the kind that leaves even skeptics in awe, the kind that shifts destinies and alters history. Throughout Scripture and in the lives of God's chosen, the pattern repeats. obedience. Abraham displayed faith when he believed God's promise of descendants despite his age, but it was obedience when he took Isaac up the mountain that unlocked the breakthrough of provision. Moses showed faith when he trusted that God had called him to deliver Israel, but it was obedience when he stretched out the staff over the Red Sea that unlocked the breakthrough of deliverance. Joshua believed the walls of Jericho would fall, but it was obedience to the unusual instruction of marching in silence for 7 days that triggered the supernatural collapse. Faith prepared their hearts, but obedience activated their hands. Breakthroughs did not come because they simply believed in their minds. Breakthroughs came because they acted in alignment with that belief. The union of faith and obedience is the weapon that turns promises into realities. For many of God's chosen ones today, the delay in breakthrough is not because God has withheld his blessing, but because obedience has not yet met faith. Some believe but refuse to act, while others act without truly believing. The enemy thrives in this imbalance, keeping believers either paralyzed by fear or busy in empty motions without substance. But when obedience and faith finally meet, the atmosphere shifts, heaven begins to move, angels are dispatched, chains are broken, and what was impossible yesterday becomes possible today. This is why the enemy works so hard to keep the chosen ones from walking in both dimensions. He does not fear those who only obey without believing, nor those who only believe without obeying. He fears the ones who merge the two, because they become unstoppable forces on earth. Obedience requires humility. It requires admitting that God knows better than we do, that his timing is perfect, and that his instructions are never in vain. Faith requires courage. It requires daring to believe in the face of ridicule, standing firm when the evidence contradicts the promise, and holding on when everything seems lost. When humility and courage intertwine, breakthroughs manifest. The chosen ones must understand that supernatural breakthroughs are not random miracles that follow without alignment. They are the fruit of a life lived in tune with the will of God. A life where obedience is not occasional but consistent, and faith is not conditional but unwavering. The hidden battles of life often prepare the chosen for this union. When God calls someone to obey in small things, closing a door to sin, forgiving an enemy, giving sacrificially, walking away from toxic environments, he is training them to obey in greater things. Faith is built in these small steps as well. Trusting God to provide for daily needs lays the foundation for trusting him with greater promises. Every act of obedience adds weight to faith. Every step of faith fuels obedience, and together they prepare the chosen for the moment when the breakthrough comes. God does not waste anything. Every test, every delay, every struggle is refining the chosen so that when they finally stand at the threshold of destiny, they will not waver, they will not doubt, and they will not disobey. Breakthroughs that come through obedience and faith are often greater than what was originally expected. God never just fulfills a promise at the surface level, he multiplies it. Abraham did not just receive Isaac back from the altar, he received the affirmation of a covenant that would bless nations. The widow who obeyed Elisha by pouring her little oil into jars did not just see provision for a day, she saw abundance that secured her future. Peter did not just catch fish at Jesus' command, he experienced such a harvest that his nets broke. This is the nature of breakthroughs that flow from obedience and faith. They exceed expectations, they overflow, they ripple into areas unimagined. The chosen ones must never underestimate what God can do when they trust and obey, for his power is not limited to meeting needs but extends to surpassing them. Supernatural breakthroughs are also contagious. When one chosen person walks in obedience and faith, others are inspired, encouraged, and strengthened. The testimony of their breakthrough becomes a seed for someone else's faith. Communities can be transformed when one person dares to step into this union. Families can shift when one member chooses to obey and believe. Nations have seen revival sparked by individuals who merged obedience with faith. This is the ripple effect of divine alignment. What begins as a personal act of surrender can spread into collective transformation. The enemy knows this, which is why he fights so hard to keep obedience and faith apart. He knows that if even a remnant of God's chosen walk in this convergence, entire systems of darkness will crumble. The chosen must also recognize that obedience and faith are not always comfortable. Breakthroughs often require stepping out of safety, letting go of what is familiar, and walking into uncharted territory. Noah obeyed God and built an ark when no rain had ever fallen, and his faith sustained him through ridicule until the flood proved God true. Esther obeyed by stepping into the king's presence uninvited, and her faith carried her through the risk of death to unlock the breakthrough of deliverance for her people. These examples remind us that breakthroughs are birthed in discomfort, in sacrifice, in risk, but the chosen who dare to obey and believe will always find that the reward far outweighs the cost. The weapon of obedience and faith is unstoppable because it carries heaven's authority. When a child of God acts in obedience, heaven backs their action. When they believe with faith, heaven honors their trust. Together, these two summon the resources of heaven into the battles of earth. Angels are released, favor is granted, doors are opened, and enemies scatter. This is why the chosen cannot afford to live half-hearted lives. They cannot afford to obey selectively or believe conditionally. They must walk fully in alignment, because the world is waiting to see the manifestation of God's power through them. Breakthroughs are also tied to timing, and obedience is the bridge to that timing. Faith may carry the promise for years, but obedience triggers its release at the appointed moment. Israel wandered in the wilderness for 40 years, not because God failed but because obedience was lacking. Faith without obedience kept them circling instead of entering. But when Joshua led them in obedience, the promise that had been delayed for generations was finally unlocked. This shows that breakthroughs are not denied, they are delayed until obedience meets faith. When the chosen finally align, what was long awaited suddenly manifests, often in ways more glorious than imagined. There is also intimacy in this process. When obedience and faith meet, the chosen come to know God in deeper ways. They learn that He is trustworthy, that His commands are never for harm but always for good, that His timing is perfect even when it seems late, that His promises are sure even when circumstances shift. Breakthroughs are not just about the blessing received, they are about the relationship deepened. Every act of obedience, every leap of faith, draws the chosen closer to the heart of the Father, and this intimacy becomes the greatest reward of all. The supernatural breakthroughs unlocked by obedience and faith are marks of God's glory in the earth. They are signs that He is alive, that He intervenes, that He is faithful. They silence the enemy, they confound skeptics, they strengthen the weak, and they exalt the name of the Lord. When the chosen walk in this union, their lives become living testimonies, their stories become living sermons, their victories become proof that God still moves. This is the power entrusted to those who dare to align fully with Him. Tonight, God's chosen ones are standing at a threshold. The warning has been given. The we,